Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be continuing on today, checking out a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Dimmy. Hey Bryan, I don't think you've listened to these guys before, which is a shame because they're very influential. Steve Austin, the leader of this group, helped propel careers of many successful metalcore groups, such as producing albums for Converge, Lamb of God, and Gaza. One iteration of this band even consisted 2/3 of the first Mastodon lineup. Musically, let's just say it's pretty demented. Well, this is going to be fun. A mix of noise rock, post-hardcore, math rock, mathcore, and some sludge later on in the song. Or maybe later on in their career. Don't know how to read that one. Enjoy. Always enjoy. It doesn't matter how wild the description is. I've got to enjoy it. So we're going to be looking at the band Today is the Day with the song 6 Dementia Satyr. Let's just dive in. That's not too bad. Little indie rock with the production. The chimes are an interesting touch. Kind of psychedelic too. I can get behind this. A nice little 3/4 feel. Like a noisier Smashing Pumpkins. Fun drum pattern too. I'm trying to get around the guitar dissonance. When did this come out? Fun bass work right there too.
Dude, that is a massive tone.
Yeah, I mean it's something. Uh 1993 is when this came out. This was their debut album. This was track 2 off of that album. One of the first things anyone heard from this group. I can see the influential angle on it for sure, but I'm also thinking that I think there's more bands that came out around this time, maybe just prior, that was doing, they were doing something similar. I mean, there's definitely, I think, a grunge element to this. Um, but, the post hardcore, the mathier ideas, the gritty textures, the constant screaming. This is, they're definitely at the forefront of this. And I can see this sound appearing in a lot of bands that came close after this, especially moving towards the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. But unlike when we've checked out other influential bands around this time in a similar style, in fact, just this week we also checked out Slint, which I would say is generally in the same area too. Um, I think even the same. I think we checked out Spiderland. Well, a song off of the Spiderland album from Slint. I think that was also '93. So definitely contemporaries. But something like Slint works better for me. Something about this doesn't quite click, and I've been trying to figure it out. Maybe by the end of this little talk through, I'll have figured it out. But at the moment, I don't know. On paper, this seems like something I should at least be tangentially interested in. Let's start with some breakdown. What's going on in here? We kick the song off with some interesting drum work, bass work, a little bit of well, we get the guitar riff at the beginning. It's kind of crunchy. That may be a description of the production, though. Actually, that's a good place to start, too, is the production on this. I find it really interesting that the lead singer here was such a big producer. Well, I mean, was a producer for so many big bands. Let me put it that way. Because I'm not a big fan of the production of this at all. But, I mean, he went on to produce some Mastodon, if I remember that correctly. Um, and Mastodon has nice, clear production. This doesn't. This has that, super compressed indie rock kind of feeling to it. I would really like a little bit more space. I think you could still keep a lot of the aggression and overwhelming grittiness of it with a little bit more clarity to the instrumentation. But a lot of that may also come down to the time, money, resources, stuff like that. 1993. I don't know if they had a record label with this being their first album. It's quite possible they mixed this themselves. So there's always that I have to take into account too. I'm curious though, is this a style for them or a situation that depended on their circumstances? Regardless, it's not my cup of tea. It is too muddied, too cluttered, too gritty, too compressed for my liking. And it kicks off that way right from the start. We have that opening guitar riff. We get that for like a second or two before the other instruments begin to come in. But even from that first note, I could tell, oh, this is going to be one of those, mid to lo-fi production style. It's very raw, I think would be the description of it. And that's actually a good word because it's a segue into the composition too. The general sound of this band, even on a compositional side, is very raw. When I listen to the guitar riffs, when I listen to the vocals, when I listen to the drum patterns, there is certainly a lot of ambitiousness in them. Maybe less so. Well, no, yeah, they're all pretty ambitious, I think. But there's a lot of, no, not a lot of. There's a lack of discipline, I think might be the word I use. It definitely feels like this was a bunch of people who found out they could make noise with these instruments. The vocalist figured out he could make this sound, and they all went to making music. No prior knowledge to music creation, no academic education in the realm. And I think that, I mean, as usual, my opinion on that is it's a blessing and a curse. Having knowledge can certainly put restraints on, but having knowledge can also vastly improve music too. And the opposite is true as well. Without having those constraints, you can make some wild new stuff, but you can also make some utter trash too. And it's always impressed me how many people, how many artists in the rock and metal world make the music they do purely on gut, purely on instinct. No former training. They just know this sounds good. There's a part of them that's like, yes, this is it. Let's do it. That's I don't know, that's a really cool phenomenon on its own. And I do think that's on display here, generally speaking. The guitar riffs are crunchy, they are high energy, they make you want to move your body. The bass ideas, I mean, there's some moving bass lines in here. They're pretty cool. I don't think that they're particularly strong where I want to learn them, but it's not just pedal tone either. They're a bit esoteric, but at least they're not static. The drum patterns are consistently solid, but there are some really interesting ones in here too that kind of chuck the norm out the window and say, well, what if I did this instead? I don't know that all of them worked, but they were all interesting. Even the vocal delivery, which I think just kind of that post-hardcore yelling the lyrics out on like a surface level, this isn't that different than a lot of other vocalists, but there's also something about it. It's not so much, I don't know if I want to call it vocal dexterity or vocal variety, but there is nuance to the delivery. Each sentence seems to have a different feel to it. It's not like the technique is being, completely overhauled every other line, but it's not completely static either. There is elements of movement to it. The vocalist has different inflections of a sort. It keeps it feeling fresh throughout. It is, like I said, untrained, but passionate. There's a lot of love and care into what's being done, but not all of it, I think, works, at least for me personally. And I always find this to be an interesting place too, especially when people come to this and absolutely love it. I would love to get to that point sometime, but I don't I don't know that I ever will. I think something like this is always going to be just on the cusp of greatness for me. Great ideas, but lacking the discipline to really see them through and to shave off the rough edges into something fantastic. Really solid foundation, just never quite got that last bit of polish needed. And I'm not even talking about the production, I'm talking about the composition side. Speaking of that, looking at the fluidity and flow of this track, I don't think we have a verse chorus structure. At least I didn't pick up on any recurring themes here. It seemed like every 40 seconds or so, we just went and did something totally different. Definitely got a bit of that mathcore side there, where you just kind of create like 6 different guitar riffs, build some ideas around it. Maybe the guitar riff doesn't even come first, but you start with 6 different ideas, you build new sections around them, and then you just put them in a row. This is the song. It's these 6 ideas here. And some of them I thought flowed nicely. The transition maybe wasn't necessarily smooth, but I could see how the 2 ideas were connected. Maybe a small rhythmic device that was shared between them, or, part of the riff was carried over, something like that. For the most part, though, it's very, as mathcore tends to be, very disjointed. We were doing this, now we're doing this. Buckle up and be ready for sharp turns at any corner. It's fine. There's, whole genres built around this. It's not my cup of tea, though. And I think I'm starting to understand. Remember at the beginning, I was like, I don't like this, but I should, and I don't know why. I think I'm starting to build onto finding the things that didn't quite click with me. But there's the other part too about the composition of this that I think stands out, and it's time. The time in this track is kind of weird. A majority of this is in 4/4, but I'm constantly finding that I'm in a sort of temporal flux. I don't know what's going on. I need to give it another listen. Maybe it's drumming patterns, maybe it's phrasing, maybe there's like a fifth bar thrown in sometimes instead of 4 bars of 4. I do know we changed time signatures at one point in the song, but for the most part, this thing is in standard time signature, and yet it doesn't feel standard most of the time. Something odd is going on in that regard, and I couldn't pick it up. And I find that to be interesting too, because usually time is one of the things I'm pretty good on unless it's super wild. Dance of Eternity, where every bar is a different time signature. I'm not going to be able to keep up with that. But you give me a song that just has some extensions or phrasing reductions on it, and I can usually catch on to the pattern. And here, this one it slips through my fingers despite the fact that on the surface it seems pretty straightforward. And that confounds me. Like a puzzle where I know I have all the pieces, but they're just not fitting together in any way that makes sense. Very interesting. And I think that's going to be about where this wraps up then. And I think I kind of hit the nail on the head early on. This song has a lot of good ideas to it. It definitely seems a bit ahead of its time, definitely helped. I don't know if other bands were specifically influenced by it or if it was just predicting where trends would go. I've never heard of this band before, and we've talked about a lot of bands, and particularly in the realm of like mathcore and post-hardcore, we've looked at some of the proto bands and the influential bands, and Today Is the Day has just never come up. So either they're super unknown and were also influential, or they were a bit more prophetic, where maybe bands weren't aware of them, but they were certainly ahead of the curve. Either way, they definitely had their finger on the dial. But I do feel like they were just a hair bit too rough or raw with their ideas in general. Solid ideas, solid concepts, but the execution just wasn't done as well as some other of their contemporaries that have been brought up often in the conversations about the early days of post-hardcore and even metalcore, mathcore. There's just something about them that's a bit rougher around the edges. And I do just want to throw this out there. I don't think I've said this disclaimer in a while, but just in case, this is all based off of one track. This might have just not been the right song for me to understand or appreciate them too. There's 11 more songs on this album, and they had 5 albums just in the 90s. So there's a lot. Wow. They put out an album in 2020. They're still kind of around. I mean, it's been 5 years still, but they're still kind of around. Okay. I might have to check out some of their newer stuff and see where they've moved into. Maybe see how they've shaped up music, or if they haven't shaped up, maybe this is, again, their sound. They just really like being here and they're still playing stuff like it. But yeah, for me, it's just a little too raw. Although maybe it's still a band I need to keep an eye on. Maybe not necessarily their earliest stuff, but there's definitely some things here that I should like. On paper, this is a band for me. Let me check out some lyrics. This is a song that seems to be about being yourself, being true and authentic, sincere to who you are, and realizing that the world doesn't want that sincerity. Now, a lot of this is little snippets of ideas. This stanza will be about this. Might have a lot of repetition to it, might not, but it's that. After that stanza is over, the next stanza will be about a different concept that ties together with everything. But it's very, I'd almost say stream of consciousness-y. I think with the repetitions patterns, it probably isn't stream of consciousness, but it does kind of come across that way in how some of the stuff is stated. And I think you'll pick up on that as I read some of these stanzas. We have pushing and shoving and fighting and feeling like a big nothing, holding my hands and praying and dying, and all for nothing. So pushing, shoving, fighting, this is all about, striving to exist, feeling like nothing but doing all of this anyways. And he says holding hands, praying and dying for nothing, feeling like what he's doing doesn't actually achieve anything or maybe anything worthwhile. It says I'm wishing for the world, I'm trying to survive, I try to stay alive wishing for the world. You're killing me and I don't know. You're testing me and I don't know. I don't know. They stepped on me when I was down. I had to get up just to get down. You're killing me and I don't know. There is one stanza I skipped, which I think kind of ties everything together here, which is don't say this, don't say that. If I'm not me, I'm not free. Born alone, die alone, you must live. Even if you feel lonely in this world, you have to be who you are, even if no one else wants that. It's the one directive to life, is to live it. Says even if you're being beaten down, even if the world pushes you down, even if you're slowly being killed, you have to live your truth. The final two stanzas are just a repetition of a phrase, with the first one's just saying supernova and the second one saying school of life. So school of life, hard knocks, learning lessons by being beaten down. But supernova is a little more interesting. A supernova is the death of a star. The star explodes, it dies out, but the energy, the particles all get pushed out into space. It helps create other things. I find that really interesting. Somebody who feels like their life is meaningless, it's nothing. They still fight for it, though, in hopes that their pain, their suffering will lead to life elsewhere. That their energy they're putting out can be used by others to maybe do something a little bit more worthwhile. And looking at the song musically from this perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. This is an angry song, not just in the fact that they don't feel like they have a place in the world, but angry that the world doesn't want them, and they're going to use that anger as power to ensure that they are seen and heard, to ensure that they are who they are, and despite having no place in the world, carving one out. It's taking that anger and turning it into a strength. And so the song being angry and abrasive and all of the things that didn't work really well for me ends up being a strength for itself. It carves its place into the musical history. I think it's interesting too. The song is about being shunned, about not finding a place to fit in. And my general criticism for this track is that it was interesting, but didn't quite work for me. This song musically doesn't really have a place in my world, but it doesn't care. It'll fight to be heard regardless. I can see it being a bit of a rallying call on top of anything else that it's trying to be. A shout for acceptance, maybe. to kind of let everyone know who feels that maybe they don't have a place in this world, that just existing is enough at times. Yeah, it all comes together rather well here. I think the music complements the lyrics really well. These are my thoughts on Today is the Day's Sixth Dementia Satyr. Let me know what you thought of this, though. Did you enjoy it? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of things, your own opinion or perspective. Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.